Okay, maybe I was too harsh on the trailers.
Those were up, and they did.
We're smart, and my...
He told me enough.
No, I.
Here's Chuck.
Hey everyone, it's Don G. Corleone here, and I'm here with a brand new movie review, and this movie review is going to be for a film that came out during the holidays of 2023. I didn't get the chance to review this one, I was on break, but I'm busy with Christmas-related stuff, but it's a film I technically saw around then, and I actually saw it a second time to get this review made, and that film is going to be for none other than December 2023's Wonka, which is directed, I think, by Paul King. And, yeah, it's a prequel or an origin story about the character Willy Wonka. So anyways, what's the plot of this movie? Well, with dreams of opening this chocolate shop in a city renowned for its chocolate, a young and poor Willy Wonka discovers that the industry is run by this cartel of greedy chocolatiers. So that was this, that's pretty much the plot. That's pretty much the origin story of Willy Wonka. How's this film made? Well, it was around October 2016 when Warner Bros. Acquired the rights to Charlie and the Chocolate Factory character Willy Wonka for Roald Dahl's estate, and a film in development for producers David Heyman and Michael Siegel. The announcement of the project was met with a mostly negative response because it came less than 2 months following the death of Gene Wilder, who had portrayed Willy Wonka in the 1971 film. Then the following month, Heyman revealed that the project would not be a third straight adaptation of the book because they've already done 2 films of that. But it would be an origin story instead. So yeah, it's directed by Paul King. And after the film was shot and marketed, Wonka would go on to premiere in London at the Royal Festival Hall in November 2023, then got released in the United Kingdom December 8th, and the United States a week after that on December 15th. And so far at the box office, it's grossed over $552 million worldwide on a $125 million budget, and shockingly received some positive reviews. And, well, yeah. And it's got nominated for a few awards. Now as for my reaction to Wonka, well, you guys should probably know, I did see the trailers for this movie when they released, and I was not hyped at all. Because for one, it was just going to be another backstory for the character, and we already had that with the 2005 movie with Johnny Depp, so why tell another origin story? Second, it was a prequel to the 1971 film, and you're wondering my thoughts on the 1971 film from Gene Wilder. Rest in peace, Gene Wilder. Sad he's gone. Rest in peace to him, but it doesn't mean I don't find the 1971 movie overrated, okay? I'm not a fan of the 1971 film. I think the 1971 film is kind of boring and very overrated, and it's not even faithful to the book. Like, guys, you're going to get mad at me for saying that, but even Roald Dahl hated the 1971 film. It wasn't even faithful to his book at all. Okay? Some gotta realize even Roald Dahl did not like Roald Dahl actually really hated the 1971 film. As much as people want to bash the Johnny Depp one a lot over harshly, like, that was too dark, Wonka was a little too rough on the kids. He was rough on the kids in the 1971 film as well. And the book. So why is that even a criticism? And Wonka's always kind of acted like how Depp portrayed the character. How was that even a thing? Okay? Like, seriously, like, the 2005 film actually was more faithful to the book. Right? And then, like, now back to this movie. We're not talking about the Charlie film adaptations. We're talking about the film that explained his origin story a second time. I saw some reactions to this movie. People were liking the film, so I decided to see it during holiday break. You know, around that day I had that IHOP video I filmed. I tried the Wonka IHOP pancakes. Those were awesome. Those were delicious. Yeah, and I saw it a second time to review this. What did I think of the film? Well, this is really shocking. I'm shocked to be saying this. I really am. I was expecting to hate this movie, but I easily liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. Yeah, it was enjoyable. Actually, surprisingly enjoyable. Yeah, pretty fun time. No woke propagandas, no bullshit politics. It was just pure mindless entertainment. It actually did respect the source material, I'll admit that. It didn't make Wonka a loser. It actually made him a likable person and not a grumpy jerk. So yeah, it actually respected the character Wonka, and it respected the source material. And to some who do like 1971 film, it did kind of respect that as well, and not trying to overforce it in your face. The music was good, the casting was decent, the characters most of the time, except for one I'll get to later, were enjoyable. And I actually thought Wonka was cool. On paper, Wonka was going to seem like a cynical cash grab an idea, but in the ends of the talented duo of Paul King and Simon Farnaby, it becomes another heartwarming story of a kind person who wants to make the world a better place. And it feels its runtime more than King and Farnaby's previous works and remains thoroughly entertaining and emotionally investing. Yeah, and the darker edge of Willy Wonka, that's actually gone here. Timothy Chalamet lacks that edge, and it doesn't matter, consider the film is going for, and it's just basically back when he's younger. This Wonka is really innocent to a fault, morally pure with a high level of quirk that Chalamet is able to communicate in his enthusiasm and movement. And it's a nice change of pace compared to his usual roles, especially in the Dune movies, which I've introduction to him. Timothy Chalamet gave a strong performance in the lead role, and those behind Chalamet are also amazing too, from Kyle Lane to Keegan-Michael Key to the trio of Patterson Joseph, Matt Lucas, and Matthew Bain as the Chocolate Cartel. And the latter three's dance number for the chief of police at the beginning is actually pretty amusing, and the musical elements in general are solid. And this is coming from a guy who's not a big fan of musicals. There's some I liked. I like Les Miserables. For live action ones anyways. I like Les Miserables. I like The Greatest Showman. And even though I despise Rachel Zegler now, I did like the West Side Story remake. There's 3 live-action musical films I've enjoyed. But I don't overly love the genre, except for those 3. And now you can include this. And when it comes to the evil duo Housekeepers, Tom Davis and Olivia Colman in this film are also very fun to watch as well. And all characters played by those mentioned above after Lane could have easily have been really cringy, but that was not even the case for anybody. They're actually well written and shown and cast in that regard. And getting the audience to commit to this musical requires some work too. Like Wonka has a few extra hoops to jump through on top of that. They're building off this existing property they have to pay respects to as well. They establish the world is all paramount, and we're left to believe that Wonka could imagine these confections and use only the fairest of ingredients to make people fly or experience an entire party in a movement. And clearly Wonka's production budget is huge, and the creative team uses it to great effect. The fantastical energy the movie is cultivating, and it's dependent on how real a chocolate flower works, and how plausible it is for a giant chocolate vault guarded by monk seams, and the practical sets are impressive and deftly, and with Wonka's use of CGI, I kind of hate CGI in this era, but this time the use of CGI, it's not annoying, and it's not ugly as hell it's not like Quantumania levels of ugly, or MCU now levels of ugly. The CGI is beautifulness. And how the movie begins, it actually sets the story really well. We get introduced to Willy Wonka, who's literally, we know, is a magician, inventor, and chocolatier. He's now in Europe to establish his chocolate shop at the Gomez Gourmet, and he uses up his meager savings, his course to stay, and then gets course to stay at a place called the Scrubbits Boarding House by her henchman Bleacher. And despite the other person who lives there, this orphan named Noodle, trying to warn him about the small print there, Wonka ends up signing a contract because pretty much Scrubbit prevents Noodle from being able to warn him, and pretty much barks her to go away. And they're pretty much Noodle's abusive. They adopt a Noodle out of the kindness of their hearts, but they actually kind of treat her like shit, and they abuse her a lot. They kind of throw her into this little room that's kind of like, let's go a little throwback to the Chokey from Matilda. Basically, they're like, almost like that, like, and to pay off all those debts, like, Wonka has this idea and sells over chocolates. And chocolates that make people fly. They face mockery from like 3 rival chocolatiers who call the chief of police to confiscate his earnings for selling without a chocolate store. Now he's unable to pay the expensive fees imposed on him by the contract, and then Wonka is forced into slavery by Miss Scrubbit, and alongside 5 other captives living down there, including the Noodle girl we saw earlier. The character of Noodle. I should have said that earlier. That sounded wrong. Learning of the chocolate cartel consisting of 3 rival chocolatiers, they exploit the chief's temptation for chocolate to force Wonka to leave town. And Wonka makes his escape with the help of Noodle, and he promises her a lifetime supply of chocolate, and she promises to teach him how to read as well. So yeah, it proves that this worker, the 1-2 punch that's like improving like with the Paddington films, Paul King knew what he was doing with those 2 movies. I mean, like, since he's the director of those 2 critically acclaimed films, Paul King clearly knew what he was doing when he was adopting Wonka. Yeah. So, and Paul King literally brings the same amount of energy, charm, heart, and smarts he delivered in those films with his Marley loving beast to his high-profile Willy Wonka prequel, and it becomes the crowd-placing hits of the festive and holiday period of 2023, and utilizes his comedy background, career-making work on that TV series, The Mighty Boosh. Like, King had literally made sure that the musical-infused adventure that follows Timothy Chalamet's young Willy Wonka during his first attempts to conquer the chocolate world with his magical inventions and colorful showmanship. It's a film that constantly is on the move and one that ensures it's filled on the brim with wonder, whimsy, and wackiness, and should find it appealing to a wide range age group and audience. And it rarely pauses for breath between its colorful character interactions, enjoyable song, and dance numbers, and more poignant aspects that make Wonka more than just all the sugar and no substance. And you also have King's enjoyable ride harbors even a clear labor of love at its core. It gels perfectly with more old school making, vibe, and delivery. That like one more acts as example, like Hollywood's incessant nature to be all hip and boundary pushing. It's not always needed here with this movie. And within King's winning Wonka formula, he managed to create and gift a number of memorably fun performances from his talented cast. And while Chalamet gave it his best shot, it was definitely his most challenging performance. And his role as Willy Wonka actually even works. And most of the comedic gold is found in the supporting cast of the film. So then, after Wonka and Noodle finally pair up, they go produce his signature chocolate. They travel to a local zoo because Wonka's like little chocolate needs milk. And there's a funny scene where Noodle like sees these whole carton of milks and decides to take one of them. Wonka puts it back. It's like, no, that's stealing, and I require giraffe's milk. Like, so yeah, I like Wonka scolds her for trying to steal here, and even he's not going to steal other people's things, and he pretty much reprimands her for trying to think they can steal their milk to get it done. So Wonka's not going to cheat to make his milk. So I like that Wonka's not going to just bribe and steal other people's things just to get his work done. So that actually also makes him likable here. They go to milk a giraffe, and they literally decide to distract the zoo workers so they don't break in, and they're gentle with the giraffe even here. And then they team up with the other laundrette workers they're held captive with, and they embark on this chocolate-selling crusade to alleviate their debts and get out of Scrubbit's life, and using tunnels underneath the city to evade Scrubbit, the police, and the chief of police, who literally, and throughout like the whole thing, like the chief of police really loves chocolate, and even he's a pretty funny character, especially with Keegan-Michael Key's funny performance. Like, sometimes when we cut back to him, he's often gained a few weight, and when he's trying to investigate, he kneels down to look for Wonka, kind of like looking for Wonka on the tunnel. He has already fled to the sewers, and then he can't get up. It's like, I think I gained 150 pounds in the next 2 weeks. I need to lift up. Or when he's like trying to threaten Wonka not to sell any more chocolate, he dunks his head in like the ice cold fountain. Never sell chocolate again. And then pulls up like, I can't hear you. No. Then shoves again, like, I have water in my ears. And the chief's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's actually some things that are actually pretty funny in here. Right here, so the chief of police is actually surprisingly a pretty funny character. Especially when he keeps getting more pounds because all the chocolate he keeps getting bribed with by the cartel. And of course, after we teamed up with the laundrette workers and they're selling more and more chocolate, we meet our Oompa Loompa character named Lofty. That, like, Wonka has often said that his chocolate keeps getting stolen by him. Like, the orange little man keeps taking my chocolate. And then of course, Wonka, we finally meet that orange little man. Wonka discovers that Oompa Loompa seeks retribution because of the cocoa beans like Wonka unknowingly stole from Loompa Land years ago under Lofty's watch, and it results in Lofty's exile and then of course, in that little backstory right there, then Wonka decides to try to settle a truce with the Oompa Loompa, and Oompa Loompa makes Wonka come closer. He knocks him out with a pan, and he steals the chocolate. And and the chief of police, we all know, has gained weight and captures the government but bribe the money. And it really teaches the audience about bribery, corruption, and government. And the visual is, without being overly preachy and overly forced, the visuals look wholesome, the CGI looks good enough, and the effects of the chief of police weight gain actually look very impressive right here. I will say that. And Paul usually makes great storytelling, great characters too. And the soundtrack of this movie is catchy and it's great. And the musical of this movie is not that spectacular, but with a lot of backdance or awesome choreograph, it's good enough for musical and choreograph. Speaking of that, some people should obviously know, well, to be fair, the 1971 film was a musical as well. And technically, the 2005 film kind of is a musical if you count the Oompa Loompa song, so this movie is a musical too, so it wouldn't really make sense if it wasn't a musical. And it being a musical, I can live with if the other adaptations were musicals. Yeah, it's got so many songs, so joyful and catchy, but it's not just the whole entire dialogue, it's just them singing, like a lot of Broadway film adaptations were usually, but yeah. And most of these songs are new, they still borrow a couple of classics from the 1971 film. Yeah, it uses a few songs in the original movie, and it creates a few new songs that are enjoyable, so it doesn't just copy and paste all the original songs. The plot is pretty simple, and it's a movie that takes this simple plot and makes it enjoyable and does all that well. So yeah, so pretty much after the Oompa Loompa Lofty steals that chocolate, you think that Wonka and his friends are going to be screwed, but that doesn't matter in the end because they already made enough funds from selling chocolates, and now they can finally open up the store that Wonka wants to open. Then the chief and the chocolate cartel are now unable to arrest him because now he has a shop, so they come up with a new plan. They reveal Wonka's shop plan to Scrubbit and Bleacher, and so Scrubbit and Bleacher poison his chocolates with different ingredients that have negative side effects like Yeti sweat. So when the store opens, the customers are buying all that chocolate, the customers start to notice their hair growing and changing color, and Wonka finally realizes that the chocolates got poisoned by Scrubbit and Bleacher, and of course the customers are now furious. They destroy Wonka's store, demanding refunds. And so with Wonka's dreams ruined now, he agrees to the cartel's offer to leave town by ship so he can pay off everybody's debts and they can finally be free from Scrubbit. But the cartel go on against partially half of that because even though they promise that Noodle will finally have a family, they go against that because they decide their main workers can leave, but let's leave Noodle with the abusive Scrubbit. Yeah, they leave with Scrubbit, and we find out that the cartel's leader Arthur Slugworth pays Scrubbit to keep her there indefinitely to a miserable life with them. And while on that boat, as he's heading back, Lofty is there again. Lofty says that Wonka was not leaving his sight. And Wonka learns that Noodle was actually the niece of Slugworth, and so him and Lofty then escape the boat because they find out the cartel are actually arranged for it to explode once it hit the water, so they weren't just going to let him leave town alive. They were actually secretly allowing the boat to basically kill him in an explosion. Then Wonka then reunites his friends, and they go to rescue Noodle from Scrubbit, and then they set off to foil the cartel and get their payback. Yeah, throughout this whole movie, this movie's an escape. It reminds the viewer of what it used to be like when you went to see films at the theater. The whole cast does unusual but also entertaining, and that they weren't people we always see in films before. Some of these face actors I barely saw in any films before. A lot of them I did see in films before, but the captives, I don't remember seeing a lot of them in films. So it felt like fresh faces, or if I did see them in films, I just don't remember. But fresh faces with that silly act is usually exactly what this movie requires. And yeah, when it comes to other performances of the film, young Corleone as the young but world-weary Noodle does actually a good job without being sickly sweet or annoying. And the crew baddies one of them I did not even recognize at first. They're perfectly over the top too, and they're not annoying. They're not irritating to sit through. Their over the topness is actually really enjoyable, and I really liked that. And then, of course, after like Wonka and his friend, Wonka and the captives rescue Noodle, we get it to the finale of the movie. And how does this finale actually work pretty well? Like, so they take advantage of like Abigail of one of the captives' distraction, and so Wonka and Noodle go to the cartel's base and get this, guys, like one of the priests of that place they go to is literally ironically played by Rowan Atkinson, who throughout the movie when I first saw it I didn't recognize that was actually him. It was nice to see Rowan Atkinson again after it's been kind of a while since I last saw him in any stuff, so it was nice to see Rowan Atkinson again as the priest of this, as the corrupt priest of this place. Read here, so yeah, and actually also gave a really enjoyable performance. So it was nice to see Rowan Atkinson again. Then, once Wonka and Noodle arrive, they get confronted by the cartel, and Slugworth reveals that Noodle, who was reported dead to her mother, Dorothy, got left by him to scrub it, so that he could eliminate her claim to the family fortune and he could claim the fortune for himself. Then the cartel attempts to drown Wonka, Noodle, and Chocolate, but this is an origin story, so we know Wonka's gonna live, so yeah, so because like Rowan Atkinson's character kind of took the jar that Lofty was about to likely come back and steal again, and like the priest I think ate all of it, and Lofty pretty much knocks him out that empty jar, and so Lofty then rescues Wonka and Noodle. And now with Wonka, and then Wonka and Noodle then go expose the cartel's misdeeds to the authorities and the public. And so Wonka's friends release the cartel's chocolate reserve through a fountain. And it's faced like Wonka's unique ingredients. It ruins the cartel's enterprise. And the cartel meets their downfall. And the police arrest the chief, who is now like unable to get out of his car because of all the chocolate he's eaten. There and then the crowd. And then after that, the crowd reveals in tasting Wonka's chocolate fountain. And Wonka unwraps the last chocolate bar his mother had given him, and discovers, like, inside of it was this golden paper that's kind of like a little hints foreshadowing the golden tickets. And it was a message that said, like what matters is who you share the chocolate with. So he decides to share that whole bar with his friends. And he later, then after that, sometime later, he reunites Noodle with Dorothy, and it turns out Dorothy, like, did not actually really die, and she's still alive. So that was nice there. He reunites Noodle and Dorothy together, then bids farewell to Noodle, then settles his debt to Lofty, and then of course he instead of opening a new chocolate shop, he instead decides to open a factory to make more chocolate for the world. And then of course he finds an abandoned castle for sale. So yeah, that way with an abandoned castle, like, no one can poison his chocolates again. They'll never know about the shop. They'll, like, his chocolate can't be foiled now. If it's, like, an abandoned area, it's a little more away from the town. His chocolate can't be interfered with this time. And starts building his own factory. And, of course, like, with even though Lofty's dead settled, he decides to have, since it's kind of foreshadowed that he'll recruit more Oompa-Loompas for the place, he pretty much keeps Lofty as the tasting chef. So, because, like, we all know, like, the Oompa-Loompas later start work with Willy Wonka, as we see in the actual Charlie story. There. So, I guess it would kind of make sense for him to keep Lofty. So, yeah, Lofty becomes a tasting chef. And it's not the end, and then the kind of movie somewhat ends, but it's not the end of the movie just yet. Because, like, during, like, the credits in an epilogue, Lofty then pretty much tells the audience about what happens to Wonka's friends and what happened to Scrubbin and Bleacher. We need to know what happened to them first. We can't just end the movie with Scrubbin and Bleacher getting off scot-free, and we can't just end with the captives not knowing what happened to them. So I like that we get to see what happened with the captives instead of just saying, we don't know what happened to them. That's just that. Lofty then narrates how the captives then return to their old lives, and that's not all. Then he shows footage of what happened with Scrubbit and Bleacher. The police arrive at Scrubbit and Bleacher's place, and they finally get arrested. They get their comeuppance, because apparently now the police know they basically sabotaged all of Wonka's shop, and so now they're getting arrested for it. And their attempt to eliminate the evidence fails because they end up suffering the Yeti sweat effects. So it's good karma for them. They poisoned the chocolate, so now they're going to suffer the effects the customers want. And now their lives are going to be ruined, and they're probably going to be now going to jail, and they're probably going to have to work the slave life that Noodle had to live. So, and they're captives too, so they'll be having to do that work. So now they're going to get a taste of their own medicine when they're in jail. Yeah. We never know what happened to Rowan Atkinson's character except for getting knocked out, but I would kind of wish we kind of showed the comeuppance Rowan Atkinson's character got, instead of just getting knocked out and then just never being seen again. But that's pretty much how the movie ends right there. It was a nice ending. The captives going back to their old lives. Noodle finally free from Scrubbit and getting to be with her mom again. Yeah. And now both Scrubbit and Bleacher are both arrested because they sabotaged Wonka's shop, and the cartel and the chief are all ruined for life. And Wonka builds his factory instead of a shop this time. So it's a nice way to end this origin film here. Now, with that being said, despite that, it's got bad qualities, definitely. And our first bad quality with the film, first things first, my first bad quality would be the character of Lofty. To be honest, I'm not really a fan of the Lofty character. I don't think he was really that enjoyable like people were making him out to be. He just wasn't all that funny as many people thought he was. He's just there to kind of cause Wonka hell, blames him for something he did to himself. Because like when guarding the beans, he just fell asleep on the job, so why blame Wonka for getting him banished in the first place? You fall asleep on the job, you kind of did this crap to yourself. In his song number, like, there's a minor fart joke before we cut to Loompa Land. And, like, we don't even see the rest of the Oompa Loompas joining Wonka in the end. So, why have an Oompa Loompa in this film if that's not even going to be part of the story? Now, I don't blame Hugh Grant, in part, for the role, because he was just kind of focused on the payday of it all, and, to be honest, even he's not apparently wasn't even a fan of the role either. Like, it's a little harder though, because it's billed as the origin of Willy Wonka, the inconsistencies of where the Oompa Loompa characters came from, and how Wonka ended up being tied to them is just inaccurate Meltzo's story. Like, honestly, like, Tim Burton did that whole part, like, way better when he met the Oompa Loompas in that version. Because Wonka didn't steal from them. And, like, whatever was supposed to be guarding them didn't fall asleep on the job and just get themselves in trouble. And yeah, and I kind of wish we got a bit more of Wonka's backstory in terms of how, like, maybe he wandered through the world, having adventures, collecting all the ingredients for his chocolate, and what made him come to Europe to do all this, and coming up with the specific ideas. And finally, like, the beginning does start off kind of slow and boring at first, but it thankfully does get better as it kind of goes on. Other than those, though, Wonka was decently enjoyable, and it is worth buying to those who love the 1971 film, even if I didn't. Because I at least respected the source material of any versions. In the end, Wonka is totally worth a watch and buy to those who are fans of the story, and are interested in seeing a prequel that respects the source material. Anyways, that's it for my review of Wonka. If you're wondering how I'm going to rank Wonka, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you guys are delighted in seeing a new refreshing prequel that doesn't sway away from the source material, then this movie is totally worth watching and buying for your collection, no doubt. And if you're wondering how I'm going to rank Wonka, I'm going to give Wonka a 7.5 out of 10. There we go. That wraps up my review for Wonka. So, our next review is going to be another epic rant. And this one I've hardly had the time to write the script for because of the snowfall, and I'm worried about other things right now, what's going on. So it took a while to get these ones made. There was a lot of stress, kind of going through a really stressful January, kind of a horrible way to start the year already. So already kind of too much of a grumpy mood at the start of 2024. And part of me is hoping the year will hopefully get better, but I'm also having doubts. I'm trying not to have too much. I don't want to have expectations for years being great after 2020, so I don't see a point in that stuff. Until then, guys, that will be it for this review. Thank you all for watching. If you like this, want to see more, and don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.